Hello, everyone. Today is Tuesday, September 25th, or Wednesday, September 26th, depending on where you are. And this is the weekly meeting for Kubernetes Sig Docs. Let's start with new contributors. Everyone looks pretty familiar, so hello. Updates and reminders. Many thanks to Jennifer Rondeau last week for being the PR wrangler. We ended up down a net of 20 PRs in our PR queue, which means that Jennifer wrangled a lot of PRs. So many thanks to Jennifer. It is my shift this week, so we'll see if I can do as good a job. I see that Zach Arnold is not here, but I have it on good authority that 112 docs are going well. Let's see. I also have a note here. I think we're going to, I don't see Raji here. She might join us in a little bit or she might not. But I think unless she joins us, I would say let's hold off on discussing accessibility until Raji can talk more about the tools. But I would encourage folks, if you haven't looked at the links yet for the accessibility tools that Raji is proposing that we use, to take some time this week and check those out. Let's see, let's move on to repo branching strategy. So in last week's weekly meeting, we had talked about the possibility of using subtrees. There have been sort of two discussions that whether we should use internationalization repos, encourage internationalization repos to use commits back and forth, or whether we could use subtrees. And after investigating subtrees, they're really good if you have a very simple strategy with one branch to be concerned about. But if you need to do more than that, like we do with Kubernetes, with the Kubernetes website, they're really, really difficult. They scale in complexity very, very quickly. And they're pretty fragile as well. There's not, once you add a subtree, there's no way to remove it. And you can't even poll to see whether you have a subtree set up. There's no way to simply discover a subtree after you've set it. So you'd better hope that you set it up correctly the first time with no misspellings and even one character off, and that's it. We have a working group for branching strategy. We have a meeting set up for Thursday, but it's looking like what we're going to do is confirm that in order to get content back and forth between Kubernetes website and internationalization repos, that we're going to ask that contributors simply pass commits back and forth between repositories. That seems like the easiest strategy. It's maybe not the most elegant, but in this case, I think elegance comes with too high a price for maintenance. There's no need to be that fancy. So let's see. Yeah, we're meeting on Thursday the 27th. Junyi, I know that your group has some questions or some developments. Would you like to talk about those? Would you like to talk about your branching strategy?
Okay. I made a strategy for our Korean docs repository maintenance. I will explain currently what we are doing. Let me share the screen for a while.
Great.
So I shared the branching strategy with the Korean translation team. The background, we have some kind of limitation to contributing to the upstream. First one is we need to work on the separate translation repositories. And second limitation is that we need to make a pull request in a single squashed commit. That's current localizing guide. So I think that I don't want to change the limitation that current upstream suggested. So I thought I tried to make a solution without changing upstream guide. So I made workflow overview. First, we need to check from upstream branch, check out from upstream branch, and we do day-to-day work. That's normal workflow. And third part is the most hardest part. We need to periodic update. I think it should be done in 2 weeks, every 2 weeks. When we are ready to push in perspective of downstream maintenance, when we are ready to push, we need to push to upstream and pull from upstream. And we are when we are not ready to push, we need to pull from upstream to update the changes. We made a criteria for push. The criteria is no outdated content, and we need to meet the requirement that of the minimum required pages translation. Okay, if you have any question, please interrupt.
This is great. Please keep going.
Thank you. I made some kind of diagram. The upper stream is upstream, and the stream in red line is downstream. First, we need to poke from commit number 1 from upstream to downstream, and we add commit number 2. We need to add commit number 2 so that we can maintenance our own maintenance can manage our branch. Commit number 2 is owner file change. So commit number 2 must not to push to upstream. And downstream maintainers should be sure that the merge base of each pull request should not be the ancestor of the commit number 2. Does it make sense?
Yes. I wonder, by giving you, by putting the owner's file in the top level of the Kubernetes-docs-ko, I think that we have accidentally complicated your life somewhat by requiring you to have that common ancestor where you don't push to upstream because of the conflict in the owner's file. Would it help you if we moved the owner's file into, instead of being at the top level of the repo, if we moved it instead into content/ko? So it would be specific to the Korean content that you're working on, and that way you wouldn't have to worry about pushing to upstream.
Sure, that will make easy to maintenance for us.
Okay. Let me, I'm just gonna duck out of that on my screen really quick and make a note. Open PR to move owners to content/KO.
Yeah, and just looking briefly at this, are we missing an easy win to, instead of making the branching strategy in line with the Kubernetes.io, have like a subdomain, like a ko.kubernetes.io and a cn.kubernetes.io? Is that, did we explore that at all? I know I'm coming in kind of late here.
So the subdomain, I guess we could register those subdomains, but the way that Hugo works is it would be, we would end up, URLs would look like ko.kubernetes.io/ko/ whatever the path to the document would be.
I got you.
So yeah, Hugo constructs links based on when there's a language translation available. So in config.toml, you specify whether there's a language available. And if there is, then any content available in that will follow the path. So right now, like docs in English are kubernetes.io/en. So, I mean, we could register the subdomains and do it, but it seems like a little bit of overkill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I guess it does add additional complexity. I was just thinking, trying to keep all these branches in sync, having them be two isolated branches seems like it'd be easier to maintain, but that makes sense.
Sure. I'm sorry, Junior, please continue.
Okay. And this diagram explains how to pull from upstream in a perspective of downstream maintainer. On the downstream, when we make a change onto the downstream, there will be changes also onto the upstream. So we need to merge both streams changes into single branch. So we need to make another working branch name kdocs ko dev112 ko2. And we will going to rebase onto the upstream because the upstream branch is not protected, so sometimes it is false updated. So we need to make a rebase onto the upstream, and rebase onto upstream helps us to separate downstream changes from upstream changes. So this is to make a single squashed commit when you make a pull request to upstream.
Awesome.
And so after we switch the working branch, we will start to day-to-day work on the switched working branch. And this is the most complex part of this slide. When you're ready to push, we need to make a single squashed commit on the user website repository that is not Kubernetes organization repository, because current kdocs ko repository is not GitHub forked repo, so we cannot make a pull request from the kdocs ko repository.
Right. Okay.
So Korean translation team has our shared AS-KR use organization. So we're gonna use that organization to make a pull request. And after we make a pull request to upstream, we need to make a new working branch, and we need to switch our working branch. There's some issues when we switch our working branch. When we switch our working branch, we need to find outdated contents and open an issue so that we can maintain what is changed, and so that we can update our translated contents. We have great tool, the Git diff and diff, so we can. It is not difficult to catch up the updated contents, and we did it once last week. And we need to rework every open PR when we switching the working branch. Downstream PRQ is not have downstream PRQ doesn't have too much PR, so we can handle this. So we did switching our working branch last week, and when we switch our working branch, we made our PRQ empty. But we cannot guarantee we can switch our working branch with the empty PRQ. So we need to rework every open PRQ when we change the our working branch. Okay, so Korean translation team had a schedule to update our content by pulling from upstream. It is done last week. We switched our working branch from dev 112 KO1 to dev 112 KO2. And next schedule is October 2. We have a plan to push and pull on the October 2, but I don't think we are ready until that schedule. So I don't know. We can make our first pull request on October, but we're gonna try. Okay, that's it.
Are we allowed to ask questions?
Sure.
So, what is the purpose of you work on one branch and then you create a whole new branch as opposed to being able to reuse the one branch? I think I missed that.
Because we need to make a pull request with a single squashed commit. A single squashed commit make us not to use working branch.
So there's something about going to a fresh branch that makes your life better?
Actually, I don't want to make I don't want to switch a branch, but it is not possible when we squash commit.
Zach, are you able to elaborate on that just curiously?
So it is, if I understand correctly, I think what they are doing is, so they're working on 112. Did you see like the naming convention that they were using for their tags, their working branch? That they were tagging those branches, or so Junyi, are you using tags or are you using separate branches?
Yeah, I'm using tag and separate branch also.
So both.
Yeah.
Okay. And using that to meaningfully like take all the work for this, I guess it would be comparable to a milestone, squashing everything into that milestone and then passing that, I think, as a commit. So Junyi, is the plan to use those squash commits to commit, to make those commits to K website, to push upstream to K website?
Yes, I have a plan to make a pull request in a single squashed commit, but I will not use the GitHub function squash it onto master.
Gotcha. So I guess, go ahead, Brad.
No, I was going to say, I think that the one thing that would help me would be if they had a documentation that said, here's all the steps we do when we do this, when we switch a branch, just so you could actually just, the pictures are very helpful, but just to see the concrete steps, I know would help me just to understand. I don't know if that's how they teach the new people how to do it. But somewhere I'd like this all documented, I guess. Here's an example. Boom, boom, boom. Now you switch branch. Now you do the push-pull. Does that make any sense? Or people besides me were able to get this just by looking at the pictures?
No. Junyi, may I ask, do you have, is this written up in Korean for your translation team?
No. It's a release manager's playbook, some kind of playbook. Okay. Yeah. So.
Okay.
So let me ask one question that might be related to Brad's question. So, is the reason for the additional branch that you use for squashing, is the reason that you don't want to lose the history on the working branch, so you don't want to squash the working branch? Is that why you create the additional branch?
That's one of the reasons.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. I think we're curious, Junyi, but our goal is to help and to be as helpful to you as possible. So our questions are for the purpose of understanding, not certainly not because we think you're doing anything wrong. I think your work is fantastic, and your ability to explain it effectively is superb. I think we just want to be as helpful to you as we possibly can. So thank you very much for that. That was
great.
Yeah, that was really good.
And the pictures were awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Git trees are not Git tree diagrams. I struggle sometimes to understand exactly what's going on, but that was I think the best Git tree diagram I've ever seen.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, and thank you to you and your team, both you and Claudia. Thank you very much for the work that you're continuing to do. We are learning a lot from you. I think in the future we will be careful. The next translation project that comes along will fork off of Key website, just to make everybody's life easier. We didn't even think about doing that back when we set this up, and I think now how much more helpful that would have been. So my apologies to you for not forking that and making your life easier. But thank you for adapting and moving with it graciously.
Thank you, Jake. I am doing my best.
We are very very grateful, and I am very inspired. So many thanks to you. All right. Jim, I know last week you had expressed interest in being invited to the working group for branching discussion. So if you, but I've lost your email. Will you send it to me on Slack so that I can get you an invite to the working group?
Yep, no problem. Send it right now.
Thank you. Ginny and Claudia, I know that the time is deeply inconvenient for you. The meeting, I think, is on Thursday. Thursday at 1 p.m. US time, which would be, I think, 6 a.m. on Friday for you, maybe even earlier than that. So if you were going to be up anyway, I would happily send you an invitation, but we're happy to pass along the whatever updates we have from that meeting.
Okay, I'm gonna try to join the meeting.
Oh, bless your heart. All right. Will you, Junyi and Claudia, if you want to, but only if you want to, will you send me your email on Slack, please, so I can make sure that you at least get invitations? All right. So let's move on and talk about setting quarterly and yearly goals. So just by a quick show of hands, who will be at KubeCon in Seattle? Okay. If you can come, that would be great, Ginny and Claudia. So I was talking with Tom Van Wordhuizen, who, if you're not at Google, is the manager for the writers who are working at Google on Kubernetes. And one of the things that we talked about, and I wish Andrew was here for this too, but one of the things that we talked about is that at the Sig Docs Summit in May in Portland, we talked a little bit about who we are, but we didn't get so much to the concrete goals of setting what it was that we're going to do and focus on. So Andrew has said that he would like to focus on setting clearer goals and milestones for what we prioritize as a SIG, and I think that's a great idea. Even more than that, I think it would be helpful to do that more frequently. I think 6 months between those kinds of goal setting sessions is just too long. I mean, when I think about May, which was only what, like 4 months ago, that's a June, July, September, yeah, only 4 months ago. That's a completely different world. So I think my goal is to take what we learned from December and then start doing that every 3 months rather than every 6. Even if it's just a remote gathering rather than an in-person gathering. Trying, of course, to tie those sessions to KubeCons or events where we know that a majority of us will be present and able to contribute in person. But making those meetings more frequent and more accessible. It's been invaluable to have contributors from the Asia Pacific region be more involved in the SIG. So I'd like that for whatever we do to be as open and inclusive as possible for contributors in different regions. But I guess the quick sum up of that would be more goals, more goal setting, and more involvement from everyone in helping set our priorities. Thoughts, questions? Yes, no, yes, and.
Do you have any goals in mind right now? Kind of things that we haven't set or should be looking at down the road? Or is it something that we could discuss, like, you know, KubeCon Seattle?
So it's been 4 months ago was a different world. 3 months from now may be an entirely different world as well. Only 2.5 months, but my goal, the things that I would like to work on are making sure that our intro material to Kubernetes is as good as possible. I still think that we're lacking in some areas. So I can't talk about it yet, but I'm talking right now with a potential contractor who I would bring on board to focus exclusively on that content. But you know, that's just my goal. I think folks are going to come to this with I think everyone's going to come with good ideas and a strong sense of what we need to prioritize as a community. And I think I don't want to shortcut that discussion process or devalue the fact that this is a thing that we do together. You know, rather than yeah, I am not to anti-quote George W. Bush. I am not the decider. I am merely one voice among many. So, all right, cool. The other items I have on the agenda are things that folks have asked to defer for next week. So I think that's it for our agenda. Do folks have any other questions or things that they would like to talk about? Steve, you got anything? You look like you have a thought.
Oh, I just wondering what the schedule is for releasing, you know, when 1.12 is going to be released, when the docs are going to release, and what kind of shape the generation of the reference docs is in.
I can speak a little to that. I heard that Zach generated, other Zach generated the docs yesterday, I believe. And pretty much the PR that I opened up for the 112 branch is ready to merge, and nothing's really changing that's anything major. Just kind of waiting to get our steps in line with when the actual branch is being released for, you know, the latest, you know, Kubernetes 112 stable. So I think that's tentative for. I originally heard Thursday, but I think that's already moved since I've last heard. So I'm not sure if anyone's heard anything else about the 112 branch. But as soon as they drop the stable, we're going to cut the docs as well.
Yeah, cool. And the reference doc generation went okay.
Yep. Yeah, and I talked to Andrew a little bit about that, and we ended up just merging the change that we were talking about through the PR, and we're just kind of trudging forward through that, figuring if we do end up breaking some eggs, making an omelet, we're going to fix them with PRs and, and move forward that way.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
That reminds me, there's germane to reference doc generation. I just dropped a Slack link to the Sig Docs tools channel, and Luke Perkins and other Zach. It's a terrible thing to call him. We have to come up with a better name. But there's I guess Qibing Tang created a Python script for generation, and there's some talk about adding generation into the actual build script for the website, so that we may not have to manually generate it anymore.
So, Jim, has everybody had the permissions they need to work in Kubernetes incubator? And I haven't been paying too close of attention, but has that all gone smoothly, or have I been neglecting to to pay attention to some of those things?
I think predominantly the Python script is more of a read from the incubator area. So it's not so much actually making changes to the incubator area. So as far as the read access goes, I've had no problems. Zach's had no problem. Like I said, that might be something we come across down the road or as we start talking about Lucas's tooling, but so far it's not been an issue. Yeah, because I'm in some sense the owner of Kubernetes incubator reference docs, and I haven't looked carefully at, at what that means as far as what I can do compared to what other people can do. But I can imagine that at some point during this next 3 months, we'll want to, name somebody else to take on that role.
Increase your bus number. Okay. So anything more on reference doc generation, Steve? No, all good. Okay. Anything else from folks?
I had a question for Cody. How are things going with, he was working on the navigation, and remember it was pick your right solution and that area. I hate to put him on the spot, but always curious how that's going.
You can feel free to punt to me, Cody, whenever you're ready.
All right. So we kind of had to pivot on what we were able to do for picking the right solution.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be more changes. Like Andrew and I are going to the Sig cloud provider, and there's a KEP there that we're going to have to work on refactoring, and that's going to do some information architecture changes, and that can better inform the navigation on the setup page currently. But all that to say is it's going to be a work in progress. That's going to be a little bit longer.
Sure.
That's all right.
Mm-hmm. And then we talked about trying to get resources from, the different companies or whatever to help with the cloud provider stuff, if I recall, Zach. I do have a person that was interested, so I just need to know the right place and where to connect them. And I've been really busy on some of their special projects, so I blame myself for not pushing this more proactively. But yeah, I mean, I have someone who's ready to do some cloud provider stuff, say for our products, and I haven't pointed them in the right direction. So shame on me.
So up to this point, I have been a stickler about not adding new content to that section because I know it's been going to change. But I think my mind has changed because I don't think it's reasonable to ask to apply that kind of a double standard on an ongoing sort of arbitrary basis. Mm-hmm. So Cody, unless you disagree, does it seem reasonable to, if folks have new information to add that currently belongs, for lack of a better word, belongs in pick the right solution? Is it reasonable to ask to accept commits to that article to add that information?
Absolutely. Like, it's impossible for like one person to keep that up to date. So as it is right now, if something needs to go in, that we should add it.
Okay.
Now you're referring to the big pick your right solution page where it's all the things. You're talking the part with the navigation where certain folks had in-tree kind of detailed instructions.
Just for the picking the right solution right now.
Okay. So
there's some plans for the deeper in-depth solutions coming up.
Okay. So when there are plans and you feel you're comfortable to have guinea pigs try and build those for the different clouds, we do have a person who is waiting. They're very eager to want to put their stuff in and make it fit the way you want. So just let me know when the right time is.
Sure. Actually, I'll send you a link. There's a spreadsheet right now of some companies that have like signed up for this thing. So if they want to get in on that, that's great.
Right. Because I guess I haven't, I don't recall seeing it. So it'll be interesting to see what the vision is of how that's going to work. I know how it works today, right, with the navs, and there's certain things in tree. But yeah, that'll be curious to see the vision. I know it's a very long process, of course, but it'd be curious to see what the vision is.
Have you attended any of the Sig Cloud provider meetings, Brad?
No, I have to confess I have not.
So that would be the KEP that Cody mentioned is from and for Sig Cloud provider. So if you want to see like what is cooking in terms of specifics, I think, am I right about that, Cody? Is that the KEP that's in process? Okay, yeah, there's a KEP in process to discuss exactly that architecture that cloud providers are agreeing sort of among themselves about what that can look like.
From a docs perspective or from a?
Sorry, hang on.
Oh, good mute button use.
Thank you. It didn't blow out all your eardrums. I think setting the standards for, yes, from a docs perspective.
Fantastic. Okay.
Like common standards, establishing a template in common for what cloud providers do and don't provide. Okay. I think establishing a minimum threshold, establishing common guidelines.
Okay, and so it's best to work with Cody on that? Cody, is that the right connection to get to what those standards are, or is there another contact I should be aware of? Who's the right focal, I guess, is I'm asking.
That is a good question.
Okay.
Andrew and I are going to the next cloud provider meeting, and I think we'll know more then, because we're still feeling out where this project is going.
Okay, cool. Excellent.
I'm looking right now. There's also the leader for SIG Cloud Provider is a guy named Chris Hodge. And it's let me get that. I'll post.
No, I know Chris.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I know Chris. I thought he was the person doing it more from the OpenStack domain, right?
Well, he's at OpenStack, but he's also the leader for SIG Cloud Provider.
Okay, so he's helping to work across with the other cloud providers. Fantastic.
Yeah. And I want to thank Cody for tackling Pick the Right Solution. Part of it was a very difficult project to take on, and I think Cody made absolutely the right judgment by stepping back, by real. This is not my night.
Woo. Choo. Sorry.
No, it's all good. So part of the reason why Cody stepped back is because it would have been a cloud provider editing descriptions about cloud providers by other cloud providers. And that gets into some very tricky business very quickly. And it puts Cody and it puts Google in a very awkward situation. So
Definitely.
I think that was very astute. So many thanks to Cody, both for stepping in and then for stepping back.
Sure.
So, all right. Follow up with SIG Cloud Provider, follow up with Cody about link to the KEP. Anything else? All right, that is a SIG meeting. Good meeting, everybody. Junie, Claudia, thank you again for your branching presentation. That was super awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everybody. Have a good night.